Good evening, everyone. I hope I am audible to all of you. Um just give me a second and I'll start my discussion here. Let me check if my voice is clear to all of you or not. And yes, I can hear myself. Okay. So my name is Atul Mishra and I'm your mentor for MA English program. This class is for CUET PG English entrance examination. And we are here to discuss some of the important MCQs related to the exam. As I have already talked about in one of the videos, that we'll be taking some of the MCQs and I'll be telling you things around them which you can prepare for your exam. So I may take 5 or 10 questions only in this live, but I'll be telling you things which you can read, which you can refer to by looking at these questions. And all of the questions that I'm taking, either I have prepared them based on the previous year questions from different universities or from CUET itself, or they are already asked in different universities. I have prepared them in a way to tell you about different units. So every question will differ, accordingly, and I'll be telling you what kind of expectations you can have around the topic which is being covered in these MCQs. Okay, so without any delay, look at the just a second. Just a second. Yes, this is the first question. I hope it is visible to you. And it says, one second, let me see if it is. Yes, so it says you have to identify the author, right? And there are four statements here. First says he is often described as the father of a tragedy. Second says, according to Aristotle, he expanded the number of characters in the plays to allow conflict among them, whereas characters previously had interacted along with the chorus. He was the first dramatist to present praise as trilogy, or for example, the person that we are talking about came up with a trilogy which is known as Oristria trilogy. The fourth option says Aristotle claimed that he added the second actor, deuteragonist, for this is a phrase that is used, to the Greek stage. Now, if you look at this question, this is a question from ancient classical writers, right? Classical writers, if you'll see, when we start reading literature, especially British literature, we start from Anglo-Saxon period. But even in those texts that we have, there is a reference to Trojan War, there's a reference to Greek Athens, right? Which you might have read when, for example, you read about Greek criticism. So there is access to Plato's dialogues through Republic. There is access to Aristotle's dialogues through Poetics and many other texts. And there we get to know about people like Homer, Virgil, and then you also came across this writers like Sophocles, Aristophanes, Menander, who are famous for old comedies, new comedies, tragedies. And in the history of literary criticism, first you read about Greek writers, Greek critics, then you read about Roman critics, you read about Elizabethan period. And since when you enter into Samuel Johnson, Dryden and others, they all refer to these classical writers for one reason and another. Now this question is primarily from those classical writers, the one, they have introduced so many things. Samuel Johnson and Dryden have talked about so many people who are known as father of tragedy, father of English tragedy, father of English criticism, father of criticism. These are the basic questions which they have already asked in your exam, so they are used to questions, right? I'm not going to talk about them, these type of questions. But when you look at this question, there are four statements, and that tell you a lot of actually about the classical writing. First, it says he is often described as a father of a tragedy. So there is a father of modern tragedy, there is a father of tragedy. There are two differentiation. It is simply says the father of tragedy. That means we have to think about the ancient writers. When we think about the ancient classical writers, we divide them into two parts. The one, some of them, they were writing tragedies, and some of them who were writing comedies, right? So in the comedy, we have old comedy genre, we have the new comedy genre where Menander and others are writing. And in the tragedy, we have certain writers. You might have read about Oedipus Rex, which is obviously very famous. So that means it takes you to that arena where you have 7 or 8 classical writers. The second option says, according to Aristotle, that means argument in the Poetics. He expanded the number of characters in the plays to allow conflict among them, whereas characters previously had interacted along with the chorus. Now again, it takes you to the classical time frame. If you have read the Oedipus Rex, you know there is a great role that chorus plays there, right? So whenever Oedipus wants to say something, he will interact with chorus directly. Or when you want to know about what is the atmosphere in the society, chorus will come, they will sing a song, and they will introduce you with the mindset of the people there. That means chorus played a very important role. Before that, we don't even have characters to perform, actors to perform the role. So we just had chorus in the beginning. They used to come on the stage, they will sing the song, they will tell you the story. Oedipus as a story was famous before it, right? So when Oedipus was actually performed, people already knew what is the situation, what is the story. But that is the beauty of Sophocles, right? That means first we had only chorus. As a group, when you enter into the Renaissance, you know that chorus, as a single performers also came into existence with people like Marlowe writing Dr. Faustus, but that is a different concern. Here it says this writer has introduced the second actor. That means there was a character already, there was chorus, and they were interacting. So the interaction was not dialogic. There were only two people, right? There is a one-way or two-way interaction. But now we have characters, other actor also performing. So this actor will not only interact with the chorus, he will also interact with a second actor there. That is someone, he is the writer who has introduced this thing. The third option says he was the first dramatist to present plays as trilogy. Now there were 3 questions in your exam last year which were about trilogy, different trilogies, right? Especially the modern trilogy, modern writers, Anthony Burgess question I remember. So they have asked multiple times about different trilogy. The trilogy that you read in particularly in the 20th century with Margaret, Atwood, Burgess, and so many trilogies which were also awarded. A lot of writers are awarded, double Booker Prize from the 2 of the 3 works that they have written in trilogy. So trilogy has a special space for your exam as well. This is a writer who came up with the first trilogy in your literature. It's a big deal, right? And that is Oresteia trilogy. Aristotle in his Poetics mentioned that he is the one who added the second actor. Now all of these information suggest you that he is a very, very important writer. That is why he is the father of a tragedy. Now there are 4 options here: Sophocles, Aeschylus, Euripides, and Socrates, right? Sophocles added the third character, and we have already talked about it. So the answer here is not Sophocles. Euripides is the one that is referred to again and again in the comedies of Aristophanes. Very interesting arguments if you read the Frogs, the Clouds, 2 of the very important old comedies, right? In Aristophanes is known as father of comedy, not tragedy. There he is mentioned because there is a critique of Euripides, Sophocles, and other people. And Socrates, you already know, is a character, is also a person, but is a character who we came across during when we read Republic in dialogue form. We have a person, Socrates, there. So it is one question, but it tells you that you have to read about these people as well as old comedy genre, new comedy genre, and there is so much around classical classical literature from where they can ask question. Obviously, it is Aeschylus who came up with these things. There is 7 against Thebes thesis as well, and the trilogy is known as the Oresteia, where are 3 tragedies. One of the earliest, Agamemnon, the Liberation Bearers, and the Humanities. Very famous one. I hope you all are already aware about it. One more work is of Prometheus Bound. Now, if you remember, there is a very interesting work by P.B. Shelley, Prometheus Unbound, right? It's a very famous myth as well, Prometheus, right? And there are poetries based on it. Byron has written a poem with the same title. This is a tragedy, and Shelley applied it in one of his drama, Prometheus Unbound. Byron came up with a poem talking about the same myth. So it's a very important work that can be, obviously there is a myth associated with it, which is a very interesting question. They have asked from the myth directly. So you have to read about Shelley's Prometheus Unbound in order to understand which character symbolizes what kind of mythical notion. That is a very different question, but based on the same narrative. So that is also one thing that you can explore through this question. Now the second question here is based upon the idea of identifying the novel. You know, there are several awards, Sahitya Academy, Gyanpeeth, Booker, and primarily Nobel Award. Out of four, these four awards, even there is Pulitzer as well, and some minor works as well, some minor award as well. Now they are part of your syllabus because you have a specific genre as one of the units. So science fiction award, for example, Philip K. Dick award is important for you. Science fiction ke award alag se, short stories ke award alag se. I think I might have discussed the Calcutta Chromosome, how it was awarded one of the very important science fiction award, especially and then works which are based on short stories, and they're awarded with different awards that are also a part of your syllabus. But one interesting thing about this kind of question is that they will tell you the story and they will ask you about the name of a work or name of an author. This is a very famous question that was asked in 2023 as well as in 2024. Maybe in 2025, I can't recall, but especially in these 2 years, they have asked a very similar kind of question. That means the canonical text, especially those who are awarded with any of these awards, especially in the West, so you have to read the summary of the at least 10 or 15 important Booker Prize award winning text. Writers who are awarded with Nobel Prize, if they are novelists and dramatists, you'll have to read the famous works, at least summary, so that you have the idea about the content or in which context the text is based. Look at this question and then I'll talk about it in detail. It says, is an anti-slavery novel. So itself, there are certain events, slavery, right, apartheid, partition, right, Bangladesh Liberation War, independence movement of India. There are certain Hindu-Muslim communal violence and texts based on that. There are 6-7 events that are itself very important. You have to know the history of those events along with the texts that are based on it. So, for example, when slavery was not abolished, there are writers who have written poems on it. The Negro's Complaint. This is a net question. It can be repeated in your exam as well. It's a poem by pre-romantic writer during the time when slavery was not abolished. Even I remember in BHU entrance examination, when BHU used to take their own entrance exam, they have asked this definition of slave. A slave is a person who is pervaded into a thing. This is Coleridge defining slave in his very famous work, Biographia Literaria. In one of the chapters, he discussed that. You read that text primarily for literary criticism, but it is also a question that they have asked in your exam. That means some events, irrespective of being historical, if there are texts based on them, especially the canonical ones, you'll have to know the summary along with some of the writers associated with these movements. If I ask you about Holocaust poetry, you must know that Sylvia Plath is there, who have mentioned, written so many poems where you have Holocaust imagery. Lady Lazarus, Daddy, and there are many other poems that I can mention here. So these events particularly are very important. Look at this question. It talks about a novel, and it said it's an anti-slavery novel, and it's said to have helped lay the groundwork for the American Civil War, 1860s to 1865, Lincoln, and it helped to lay the ground for that. This sentimental novel depicts the reality of slavery while also asserting that Christian love could overcome slavery. So there is a way through which we can overcome slavery, and in this case the novel suggests it is a Christian love through which you can overcome slavery. The influence attributed to the book was so great that a likely apocryphal story arose of Abraham Lincoln meeting. This is a story that is created. It became that famous that people now say that Abraham Lincoln actually met the author of this work in the beginning of the Civil War and declared, and this is a very famous quote which was asked in NET examination, in GATE examination. So it can be a very important thing for CUET examination as well. What it says, so this, Abraham Lincoln said, this is the little lady who started this great war, about the author. So you have to identify the novel. Now look at the options. One says The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. Again, very, very important text. Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Shiloh by Sylvie Foote. And then Uncle Tom's Cabin or Life Among the Lowly by Harriet Beecher Stowe. This is a writer. This is the right answer here. And it's a very, very famous text. If you're reading about the slavery narratives, especially anti-slavery narratives, there are some writers that you must read. And Harriet Beecher Stowe is one of them. Okay. Now look at the third question. It is again the same type of question, but from Indian literature. Now, if you read about Indian novels, particularly the post-independence novels, there are around 20 writers. Out of them, around 10 writers are canonical ones, right? For example, writers whom you can also arrange according to the decade, right? 1930s, you know, there is R.K. Narayan, there is Mulk Rajanand, there is Raja Rao. When you think about 1950s, 60s, Nayantara Sehgal is there, Anita Desai is there. 1970s, you have Shashi Deshpande. 1980s is a period when you have Salman Rushdie, Amitav Ghosh, Vikram Seth. 1990s, you have Arundhati Roy. Early 2000, you have Kiran Desai, Arvind Adiga, and then so on. You know, you have certain writers in the next decade as well, Anuradha Roy and others who are also awarded with Sahitya Academy Award very recently in the last 5 years. That means if you start reading his English literature, Indian English literature, particularly in in the novel field, you may find around 20 writers who are important. And within these 20 writers, there are around 50 works, obviously, which are very, very important for you. I can name these texts, right? Beginning from 1930s, there is Kantapura, 1938. There is Untouchable, 1935, right? There is The Coolie in the 50s, 1958, right? There is Serpent and the Rope, 1965. There is Anita Desai, Cry the Peacock, Voices in the City, and then there is Shashi Deshpande with That Long Silence. There is 1980s, you just enter, you have Midnight Children, you have Grimace, one of the earliest texts by Salman Rushdie in 1975. You have Amitav Ghosh, Shadow Lines. You have the Calcutta Chromosome. Then when you enter into 80s, late 80s, there is Vikram Seth, who is writing one of the best texts, that is also recently you have a Netflix series as well, 4 or 5 years back, right? And then you have Arundhati Roy writing, there is a recent text that is also in discussions these days by Arundhati Roy. But the first novel for which she was awarded with Booker Prize there in 1997. You also have V.S. Naipaul writing around the same time frame in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That means I can take a different class for that. But what I'm trying to suggest here is there are around 30, 40 writers in general, if you include poetry, novels, and dramas in English from India. And from all of them, you'll have to read the works, because this is one type of question which is very famous now. They will tell you the story, they will talk about the story of the text, and they will simply ask you the name of an author or name of a text. So it's a basic question in that accordance. And you see, it is 1488 pages book in paper book. That means it is one of the longest book ever written, in longest novels published in a single volume ever. This is a award that it's a fact that is the 1400 page ki book. You can understand kitni moti novel hogi. It feels like War and Peace. Even War and Peace also have 900 pages. So it is more than War and Peace, and it's an Indian writer, right? And it's set in a newly post-independence, just after partition, post-partition India, and it follows 4 families during 18 months, 1 and 6 months, 1 year and 6 months, and centers on Mrs. Rupa Mehra. आपको इतना अच्छे से पता होना चाहिए कि ये फेमस करेक्टर है. अगर मैं आपको मिडनाइट चिल्ड्रन का एक सिंपल करेक्टर का नाम बोलूं जो बहुत फेमस है, तो आपको करेक्टर्स के नाम पहचानने होंगे, बिकॉज दे आस्क दीज क्वेश्चंस इन एग्जाम. दे विल मेंशन 4 or 5 मेजर करेक्टर्स फ्रॉम डिफरेंट टेक्स्ट. Suppose some of the characters from Shadow Lines and some of the from Midnight Children, and they will ask you to find out the one who are from Midnight Children. It's a very famous question. That means Rupa Mehra itself is a very famous character from this novel, and she is trying to arrange the marriage of her younger daughter Lata. It feels like Pride and Prejudice, right? Where we have Mrs. Bennet, and she's looking for husband for 5 different 5 daughters of her. It is truth universally acknowledged that a single man in a position of good fortune must be in want of wife. The opening line of the text called Pride and Prejudice, an early romantic text, which feels like Victorian, but is a romantic text, and talks about the issues related to marriage. In this text also, you have Rupa Mehra, and she is looking for a husband, suitable husband, there is a hint behind it, suitable husband for her daughter, and the name of the daughter is Lata. And the place, it starts from Brahmapur, and if you'll watch the series, it shows Charbagh station of Lucknow as Brahmapur, located along the river Ganges. Patna, Brahmapur, along with Kolkata, Delhi, Lucknow, and other Indian cities, forms a colorful backdrop for the emerging stories. Now, the famous text that you have, like Midnight Children, the text, I'll tell you the answer. It is A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. It's a very famous text, right? they travel across India. If you'll read Midnight Children, it starts from Kashmir, it takes you to Agra, takes you to Delhi, Bombay, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and several other places. Even Shadow Lines takes you from India to London to Bangladesh and different places. So you'll have that setting is very, very important. It gives you a hint, even if you are trying to eliminate options. Right, now look at the 4 options here. There is Nisid Hadari, Midnight's Furies. There is Bhishma Sahini Tamas, and again a very, very important text. Once they have asked who translated Tamas into English, and you'll not find this even on the Wikipedia page. It is Dory Rackwell, the one who translated Reet Ki Samadhi. अगर आप उनका रेत की समाधि का ट्रांसलेटर ढूंढेंगे और उनका पेज देखेंगे विकिपीडिया को, तब आपको रियलाइज होगा कि बहुत से फेमस इंडियन टेक्स्ट जो है, जैसे पार्टीशन का तमस, ऐसे 2-4 और बहुत फेमस टेक्स्ट है जिनको इंग्लिश में ट्रांसलेट उन्होंने नहीं किया है, रॉकवेल ने. राइट, सो ये क्वेश्चंस है जो आपके एग्जाम में आते थे. यू जस्ट कांट इग्नोर दीज एमसीक्यूज. इफ दिस क्वेश्चन वाज ऑलरेडी आस्क्ड, यू विल हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट इज ऑप्शंस इन द क्वेश्चंस are also very important. So this is a partition text, this is a partition text, this is also Cracking India by Bapsi Chidwa is also a partition text. So all of them are partition text. Obviously Suitable Boy talks about partition is one of the issues here, but it is still there, and you know, if you have watched the series you will love it, so you must watch the series. It is also very, very interesting text in that context. I hope it helps you in that way, and I hope you will read it as well. Now the next question, हम वो टाइप नहीं हो रहा है, इशू हो रहा है कुछ. Look at this question. It is based on translation or adaptations. So before we enter into it, you know, translation studies is a part of your syllabus, right? And I will be taking classes on translation studies and comparative literature as well, and I have taken classes in the past as well. If you'll go into the playlist section, you'll find in 2024 they were asking questions from translation studies, particularly from the theories. In 2023, sorry, and in the last year they have changed the pattern, last year, and they ask question solely based on the terminology of translation. Now there are few terms that we use very what to say, without thinking about it a lot, such as adaptation, transcreation, prequel, sequel. These kind of terms, they may sound very similar, or we just don't give a lot of emphasis on that. But if you look at the question, they have asked the differences between them. Right? So what is transcreation? How it is different from adaptation? How adaptation is different from sequel? How sequel is different from prequel? You have a lot of examples for that, right? Troilus and Cressida written by Chaucer. Testament of Cressida written by Henryson, which is considered as a prequel to that text. We have Jane Eyre and its prequel by Jean Rhys, and there are many other examples. There are adaptations as well, right? There are transcreations as well of translations. There are ways, like for example, if you have a novel which is adapted into a film, that is also a type of a translation. You change the medium, right? Or if there is a drama and you change it into a movie, so that is also a kind of a translation from one medium to another. There is a term for that. That means within translation studies, you will have to think about this terminology. But other than this terminology, there are literal translations as well. The very famous text, if you read Indian literature, you'll find from the 1784, when the Asiatic Society of India was created in Kolkata. From then, in 1784 to around 100 years, there are a lot of people who have done studies in Sanskrit, Western students, Western scholars, and they have read Indian literature and they have translated text as well. There's a very famous question about Abhigyan Sakuntalam, who translated it in English. That is a very famous question. It was the first drama of any of Indian languages which was translated into English by William Jones. It's a very, very famous question that they have used in different exams, so I'm not giving that much emphasis on it. But within Indian literature, now talking about translation, the West is a totally different genre, and I can talk about it for an hours. But translation in Indian context, especially in Indian scholarship, how they frame questions, let us see. So the first statement says, Ralph Griffith, he is the one who, Ralph Griffith, you might know him if you have read about Indian English literature, the beginning. This is one of the names that comes, and it says, Ralph Griffith was the first one to translate Ramayana into English in 1870. Krishna Mohan Ganguly was the first to translate Sanskrit epic Mahabharata into English. And then Warren Hastings was the one who translated Bhagavad Gita into English. That means the great epics that we have, right? All of them, be it Ramayana, be it Mahabharata, be it Gita, we need to know the kind of adaptations that have happened, right? जैसे आप चित्रा देवकर्णी को पढ़ेंगे, Indian American writer, she has written a novel which is a novel called based on Ramayana. It's a retelling of Ramayana, retelling of Mahabharata, and there are many other people who have tried the same thing. There's one question that I'm asking you, and you can check it on, and you can comment on it, obviously, if you're watching it lately. After 2020, okay, ध्यान से सुनना, 2020 के बाद there are two people who have translated Mahabharata and Ramayana, and for which they are also awarded with Gyanpith Award. This can be asked in your exam, so you have to find out this answer and comment section में बताइएगा कि कौन सा writer है, बाद में अगर आप recording सुन रहे हैं तो, ठीक है? चलिए, so that means all the classical epics we need to know the adaptations as well as the translations, especially in Indian context. ऊपर के दोनों statements यहाँ पे सही हैं, right? रामायण को लेके और महाभारत को लेके, लेकिन गीता को ट्रांसलेट पहली बार विल्किंस ने किया था, चार्ल्स विल्किंस ने किया था. तो तीनों चीजें आप नोट भी कर सकते हो, ये कभी भी आपके एग्जाम में रिपीट हो सकता है. नहीं, ये क्वेश्चन देखते हैं. अगेन अ क्वेश्चन बेस्ड ऑन अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट which is explained here, and you have to find out the name of the novel. It says the novel set in Bombay in 1970. So that is why I'm focusing upon this fact that when you read about Indian literature, you have very less writers. So you can actually divide them according to the decades. Who was writing in 60s, who was writing in 70s, who was writing in 80s. This is how you can divide Indian writing in English, particularly novel genre, right? So it will be very easy for you to understand. The moment you'll see the first word, 1971, that means you'll have 3-4 writers in your mind and you'll be able to solve the answer very easily. So it says, this novel set in Bombay in 1971 follows a character called Gustat Noble, a Parsi bank clerk. Now we have very few Parsi writers, right? Clerk struggling with family troubles. His son refuses IIT admission and his daughter falls ill. He navigates eccentric neighbors, a close friendship with Dinashwaji and his bond with Taimul, a mentally disabled man. A letter from an old friend, Major Bilomria, entangles him in a secret political scheme involving money and danger, all against the backdrop of Indira Gandhi's India. This is emergency novel, and there are only 2 or 3 writers, mainstream writers. There will be obviously minor writers as well, but there are only 2 or 3 major writers who have written about emergency. So as I mentioned, partition, emergency is obviously another backdrop of which you find a lot of writings in India. And if you just know the aspect, you'll know this is such a long journey, and there are very few minor Rohinton Mistry type writers who are writing about emergency. Now again a question very similar to that. This is the last question that I'm taking from the same perspective. I hope the idea that I'm trying to suggest here will be clear to you. So moving ahead with the next decade, there is one question. It says, divided into 2 parts, going away and coming home. This novel follows a young boy from Kolkata who studies in Delhi and later experiences life in London. His family, the Datta Chaudharys, share a deep connection with the Price family in London through the friendship of their patriarchs Justice Danda Chaudhary and Leland Tresswashan. The narrator idolizes his cousin Tridib. Tridib is a very, very important character in the novel for his knowledge and storytelling, despite his grandmother Thamma's disapproval of Tridib's unambitious lifestyle. The narrator harbors unspoken feelings for Lela, who is unaware of his love and later marries Nick Price. Thamma, haunted by her past, attempts to reunite her family by bringing back her uncle from Dhaka, Bangladesh, where Tridib ultimately sacrifices his life during the communal riots of 63 and 64. As I mentioned, communal riots, there is a long chain of history, right? The violence started from when British came with a policy in 1910, secret, vote policy. After that, the partition happened, 1960s, 1970s. Then there is a Babri Masjid issue, 1990s. You have a history of communal violence, and there are writers who have explored those arenas. In this case, this is a violence that happened in 63, 64 in Kolkata, that also have some issues, takes it to Bangladesh after liberation war happened there. So in this story, obviously you can see 3-4 generations. Thamma is a grandmother, then there is a sister of Thamma, there is a father of Thamma, right, who is in Bangladesh, and he said he will not go to India after the East Pakistan issue that happened. And you see there is an issue about diaspora. Diaspora studies, diaspora literature itself is a different unit in your exam. This is Amitav Ghosh, obviously, I hope you understand. I've already talked about it. Amitav Ghosh Shadow Lines, a very famous text. You should remember, you should know the answer even just after reading the characters like Thamma and, just a second. Characters like Thamma and others. And Thamma is particularly a very interesting writer as well. Here there is a role of memory, there is a role of just a second, I'll just use water in a minute, I'll come back. I hope I'm audible. Let me check just a second. Yes. So yes, let me check if my voice is clear or not, and then I'll start the class. Yes, I'm audible. Yes. Now this is Shadow Lines by Amitav Ghosh. And look at the options here: The Inheritance of Loss, Kiran Desai; The Glass Palace, A Suitable Boy. That means all of them are major text and from different period as well. This is 2006. This is obviously it is 90s, and then so far. That means it's a very interesting question and goes in the same arena. Now I will not take some of the questions which are very similar to that, but one more question that I'll take, because I want to talk about a drama as well. This is a question which was asked in one of the exams in Pondicherry University. And look at this question. It says this play is about play. The same thing that we have seen in the novel is now adopted into a play. And it says this play follows a woman who initially appears to be a devotee wife and mother, but gradually realizes her desire for independence. Set in a middle-class household, the story revolves around her secret financial loan taken to save her husband's life and the consequences that follows when the truth is revealed. As she confronts societal expectations and her own self-worth, she ultimately makes a shocking decision that challenges traditional gender roles. This is a late Victorian play by a Nigerian writer. Why I am telling you this is important text? Because this is a time frame when at the end of the 19th century and especially in the beginning of the 20th century, there is a concept of new woman that emerged. Now, new woman by Susan Grant, as a theoretical framework came in 1920s with the second wave of feminism. That is a very famous argument. There is a one chain that says personal is political. That is also going along with it. I'm not going to take you to the idea of second wave of feminism. That's a totally different thing. But there, the idea of new woman emerged. The one who will not, and who will look into your eyes and she will respond to the patriarchal notions. She will not be the one who will, carry forward the previous patriarchal notions, but she will confront you, she will take care of her needs. In this particular novel, drama, what happens, this is one of the first texts where you find the new woman argument. So there's a very simple story. It's a very simple story. You find a woman doing everything for her husband, taking loan just so that she can save him. But later, she hides this obviously because there is some issues there. But later, when it was, it was revealed, she was the one who was confronted by her husband, and she was the one who became victim all of a sudden. So traditionally, it is expected from a woman that she will understand this. She will, obviously work under the patriarchal notions. But she confronted him, and there is a very famous scene where she shut the door in front of him and moved away outside the house. That means she left him. This is a very radical approach. We are talking about Victorian period where there is Victorian morality in practice. So it is not expected from a woman to, to close the gate in front of her husband and leave the home. So this is a very leaving not only the husband, leaving your own children as well for yourself, that you have to find out yourself first, you have to work for yourself first, and then you can take care of family and your husband. This was a bold text in that context. Why it is also important, if you'll read the Wikipedia entry of this particular play that I'm talking about, it also talks about how when it was performed in certain spaces, it was obviously, this ending will not be accepted. So the writer has to write a different ending where the woman will actually, first she will, close the gate in front of her husband. Then she will see her children and she'll realize that she can't go and she will stop. Obviously, the patriarchal notion in practice. So in that sense, it is a very, very strong, play, and that helped to find out many other, new characters in beginning. This is just a beginning of a new woman character in this play. Nora Helmer is the name of a character. And then you have a chain of writers who will write about, who will use this new woman concept by Sarah Grant, and they will come up with new heroines who will be very radical, like the one that you find in Clear Light of the Day, Cry Cry Peacock in Another Side as well. But I'm not talking about in that terms. This is a Norwegian writer who writes a play called Doll's House, Henrik Ibsen, who started this problem play arena, and G.B. Shaw and others will follow him in Britain in the modern period. So very, very important text when you compare it with the concept of feminism as well. So now, the right answer here is obviously Doll's House. You can look at the examples as well. They're also very interesting examples. Now I'll take one or two more questions and then I'll conclude this class. This question says, the term false consciousness is commonly attributed to which thinker? You look at the options. There is Karl Marx, there is Antonio Gramsci, there is Friedrich Engels, there is Louis Althusser. That means this is a question, a basic question from Marxism. Now, I have already talked about different theories in the past as well, and I'll be taking them separately as well. And there is one thing that you can do when you prepare for these theories like Marxism, reader response theory, psychoanalysis, new criticism, formalism, structuralism, post-structuralism, new historicism. Yes, you might be hearing these phrases for the first time because new historicism, psychoanalysis, reader response theory, not directly mentioned in your exam, in your syllabus, but there's a unit called new, old and new, classical and new criticism. When you will explore this word new criticism, you'll find all of these are part of your syllabus, and there were already 2 or 3 questions directly from psychoanalysis in your exam, which is not mentioned in your syllabus as well. That means there are few units that you have to cover. You read about Marxism, it is part of your syllabus, and in order to understand in detail, you'll have to look at the new historicism as well, which is a kind of a approval, a kind of a 1980s approach, which turned the old historicism as well as Marxism. So it's a very important. Greenblatt, Rosenblatt and others, people who are associated with new historicism. This is a direct question from Marxism. If you'll read about Marxism, there is Karl Marx, there is Friedrich Engels who started it, then there is Gramsci who came up with the idea of hegemony, ideology, organic intellectuals, traditional intellectuals, and terms like that. There is Friedrich Engels. You might have there is Louis Althusser who came up with repressive state operators, ideological state operators. He also defines ideology, very different definition. So definition of ideology by 3 different people. Marx defined it differently. Althusser with his arguments, he defined it differently, and obviously people like Gramsci who associated with the idea of hegemony. So we have a lot to discuss in Marxism as well. I will take it in another class, but this is a term, false consciousness. Now you know consciousness is a term, or unconscious is a term, which came into light for the first time when Freud talks about it, right? So there is conscious, unconscious, and Freud talked about personal unconscious, right? Then came Carl Jung, who talked about collective unconscious. This is false unconsciousness. Conscious, but it is a false consciousness, which is obviously developed with the capitalist idea in notion. So I can talk about it in detail, but it is Friedrich Engels who came up with this thing, and you can connect it with different fields as well. Friedrich Engels is also one of them who about whom you read in, I think, Marxist feminism or social feminism as well. So it is a question from Marxism, where there's a term that was asked. There can be multiple terms in question. There is hegemony, there is ideology, there is base and superstructure. There is, as you can see, false consciousness. Althusser came up with certain terms, and there are many others who will coin new terms. So you just don't need to remember what is Marxism, this class aspect here, or the understanding of Marxism. How, there are certain Marxists who turned into, they have to leave Russia after the revolution, and then there are some of them, Wallach like others, they also turned into new criticism. The 1930s, how literature was turned into a partition literature, a party literature when Lenin came into existence. So the second wave of Marxism, you can refer to at least one book, Peter Berry, Beginning Theory, in order to understand what Marxism has to offer, right? So there are a lot of things that we can actually locate. I'll stop here. We have already covered 10 questions. I think I have told you a lot about the other things that you can refer to. In this question as well, there's one question about Marxism, but there are 4 obviously people, and you can read about their theories, the ideas that they have given, along with the basic idea of Marxism, as well as the term, the concept that they have given. In the next few classes, I'll be talking about them in detail. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you have started preparing for CUET PG examination. If you want to avail our courses, we are already running classes, and we are discussing new things. We are discussing old things with new lights and talking about important works. You can be a part of our journey as well. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll meet in another video, and I hope you'll continue your journey. Thank you.